Still wind, quiet storm.
Right where I left off was December 2013. Right around this time, 2 years ago, is when it all started. I was out in the woods on a campout with my Boy Scout troop when the whole chain of events began. One of my good friends had just gotten his learner's permit, so he drove to the campout the morning of the second day with his whole family. It was then when we all heard for the first time that their family was going to be moving that summer. Another family from church and scouts was going to be moving even farther away that summer as well. They'd only been around for 2 years. To make matters worse, another of my good friends broke the news that he'd be moving to Colorado with his dad that summer. To say the least, I was shocked. Losing two influential church families and one of my best school friends was something that proved hard for me to comprehend. I did what I usually do with any conflicting situation. I chose not to think about it. Meanwhile, during this time, my dad was getting sick. We all thought it was just a wintertime illness like we all got every year, but it was becoming more of a struggle for him to breathe normally each day. I don't exactly remember when his symptoms started to really concern us, but he went to the doctor, where they discovered that there was fluid in the pleural space around his lung. Some of the fluid was removed and tested. It tested positive for small cell adenocarcinoma or something like that. By the time we got the results, breathing became so difficult for my dad that he was spending the majority of his time in the hospital. My three good friends had moved away. I spent the majority of my spare time with my dad in the hospital, watching his favorite murder shows. Being in the hospital was the first time he'd had options on TV besides only local channels. Sometime in July, he was put permanently on oxygen. Scans revealed a sizable mass in his lung. The mass was judged to be inoperable. His only hope would be chemo and radiation. Time dragged on through his illness, and in mid-August, a procedure was done to allow the fluid to drain out of his pleural space. This was successful, and his lung began to regain its function. Then it was some idiot's bright idea, only a few days after the drain was put in place, to put my dad through another procedure, talc pleurodesis, I believe it was called, to, in a sense, patch the leak. This procedure was not successful. It was performed on a Monday morning. My dad's bad lung had to be collapsed for the procedure, and it couldn't reinflate after they were finished. They attempted to oxygenate him through his nose, which caused a bad nosebleed. My dad came out of the surgery sedated and on a ventilator, since he couldn't breathe on his own. He would never wake up again. The doctor said that they would try to take him off ventilation the next day, which they were unable to do. It was that same day, Tuesday, August 26th, that they revealed to us that his liver had failed and his kidneys were shutting down. His blood pressure was too low to attempt dialysis, which was basically a death sentence. All that was left to do was wait for the chemicals to build up and cause his heart to stop. That night at 2 a.m., we got a call from the hospital that my dad was teetering on the edge of his mortality, and they thought he'd only have a few hours left. We went up and sat with him all night. His vitals became more stable, but everything continued to slowly go downhill. Wednesday, August 27th, 2014. I made the decision to go to school. It was too depressing to just sit around the ICU room waiting for my dad to die. I had to keep going with my life. That entire day at school, I was shaking uncontrollably. I was nauseated and having chills. I couldn't focus on anything. I kept looking at my phone every minute, just waiting for the dreaded text saying that he was dead. He survived through my school day. Mom was at the hospital all day. When I went to see him after school, his vitals were lower, but he was still somehow hanging on. I went back home. I had to get away from it all for a bit. I was outside raking up grass for our sheep when I heard my message tone. I opened the message, already knowing what to expect, and sure enough, he was gone. I didn't want to be there when he died, and I wasn't. I drove to the hospital as fast as I could. The darkness and silence of the room with my father's corpse and my grieving mother is an image that still haunts me sometimes. This is the end of Chapter 2. Stay tuned for tomorrow, where I talk about the things that happened to me after he died.